To the July 17th meeting of the Facilities Improvement Committee. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome. Welcome back. We had a little bit of a break. We didn't meet last week because of the school board meeting that was moved. We've got a pretty full agenda for tonight. So, after Dan Mitchell is working on getting the Google Meet up for anyone that's in the committee that's trying to get in. So hopefully that'll be up shortly, and that'll be good. So we were going to start today's meeting with an update on the committee governance. I don't know if anyone watched the school board meeting 2 school board meetings ago, but we did discuss the governance. The biggest piece of feedback that we got from the school board was that they felt like this committee should focus on the GMS situation, since that's what we've been talking about pretty much ad nauseum. So I think that we will have a more defined directive to be focused on just that with this committee. There's no doubt a need to focus on the greater Litchfield facilities situation, but the school board was wanting us to focus.
My only concern with that would be, what if we end up with a solution that ties all three together?
Well, I think we can absolutely. I mean, look, the reality is we can bring all that stuff back.
All right.
We're not gonna. If you have a great idea, I'm not gonna be like, no.
Again, the one I read through it. I like some of the suggestions, but some of them don't focus to. They bring in other areas.
Yep.
I wholeheartedly agree that it's got to be holistic,
So if we're
right?
saying only GMS, well, then that handcuffs that conversation. But if
Yeah.
we're saying focus on GMS, and if it spreads to others.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
I think, Carrie, we're going to focus on the solution for GMS, and wherever it goes is where it goes.
All right.
But I think if we're not looking at that as a big picture thing, then we're making a lot of mistakes that we shouldn't be making. So I agree.
So I ask a clarifying question. I think that
Certainly can.
From what I heard in the board meeting, it was also just to refrain from talking about parking lots at LMS and other place like.
Yeah,
Just about
we
discussing.
had been like periodically going off on a tangent about the parking lot stuff like that, which is derailing our time. So I think that was more so. But again, if it's pertinent and it relates, we absolutely can still touch it.
With that said, I made what was sent out in the email reflects in red the changes that were adopted by the board, minus those because the conversation at the school board level was, I think, a little too general for me to capture into the document, so it's not necessarily reflected. Instead of making a discussion point here, I would just welcome if anyone wants to email me verbiage to try to capture that into the documents. Then I'll prepare that all, and then we can have I can have some language for you at the next meeting that we maybe into the
Perfect.
the operational docs.
I mean, is that, I guess, sorry, Dan DeWitt, is that open for discussion? Because I believe that that's gonna split a vast majority of it. It's another committee that the majority of people sitting at the table have to sign up to, and it's another committee that I think a lot of us in the community would be interested in, and time is short and tight. I mean, would it be better just to set a priority ranking of GMS as first of the committee? I mean, I guess my fear is the fracturing that Carrie was getting at, but not only that, just in relation to GMS, but just the facilities overall. Because now you're going to have competing priorities from the FIC overall and FIC GMS.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think so. The school board was pretty direct on this and fairly unanimous on wanting us to focus our efforts.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is we're already doing that for the most part. So
Right.
I think we should continue on in the direction that they've asked us to continue on in. And if we reach a juncture where we're like, you know what, like we need to readdress this, we're happy to bring something back to the
And
board.
right now, nothing has been done to form another committee or a
Correct.
separate committee.
Right.
At this point, I'm sure at some point we'll have those conversations. And whether, if we get to a solution with this or further down the road with this, it may come back to this, but the idea is just that we focus most on a resolution for GMS.
I think we all
Excuse me.
had that in our mind, but I do think it's important to look at this holistically for all the schools, as part of it, because there may be times, which we've talked about in the past, of ways to economize by scale.
Absolutely.
If we're hiring mowing for 3 schools versus 1 school or 3 different vendors. So I appreciate the school board's direction in that, but I think that we need to keep that on the table.
Yeah.
I agree with Dan.
So, I mean, ultimately, we can bring that feedback back to the school board. We are a subcommittee of the school board, or, you know, so ultimately we have to defer to what they say. But again, I just want to reiterate, like, I'm not viewing this as a big X over the ability to,
I understand that.
yeah.
I'm worried about differing opinions and then it getting into, up to the school board and it's just, I want versus the whole group wants.
Understood.
And I would agree with Dan, and I think Ray's position is, I would fully agree that our effort has to be focused on GMS. But
Right.
by starting another committee, I think it confuses the situation and you'll get cross-legged. And I do believe, you know, there is need to look at the school district as a whole. And that requires us, I believe, as a FIC committee, to look at everything that's going on.
Yeah.
As a, for instance, I really think we need to understand better how LMS, that process evolved, where it is, and what's the lessons learned for us going forward, as a for instance, so.
Okay.
I took it, I watched the meeting, I thought it was more of a reimagining the school district structurally versus day-to-day activity. As far as cutting lawns, talking about the parking lot, I think we need to reimagine the schools on a higher level than the day-to-day activity. And I think that
It was 2 weeks ago. So but my recollection was that we were talking, that they were looking for us to focus on GMS, wasn't it, Peter?
It was, and,
Yeah.
but we did talk a lot about other stuff that needs to be done at the schools.
Right.
But again, I think we're in a position, I think, where if we can move forward with GMS, I don't know that they're gonna be able to create another
Yeah.
committee.
So I will bring this feedback back. But I will also say that there was no talk about creating another committee, like imminently creating another committee. So no one has to worry about me coming back next week and saying, and by the way, there's another committee. You're right. Like, I can commit to you that Peter and I will vote to table that. Well, I can't commit for Peter, but I will vote to table that if that's
If
the
I'm not
case.
there, I will give you my proxy.
There we go. Perfect. All right.
Then you get to see this face.
Perfect. I want to continue moving on. So I think the next most important thing is to nominate a citizen co-chair. Before I open the floor for nominations, I do want to just clarify that in terms of voting on this, I think this is going to be left to the citizen members. So meaning Peter and I won't be voting on this. The administrators don't have a vote anyways, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Ron Obelinas.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations?
Hold on, wait a minute. I gotta take notes. I wanna make sure they get the right.
Yes, our note
Sorry,
taker.
I'm
For
slow.
suspense purposes only, our note taker will pause us.
Pause. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Dan DeWitt.
Okay.
so be it.
Okay. Did I have any other nominations?
We're willing to entertain them. It'd be unfortunate to nominate someone who doesn't want it, so.
Yeah, pending, right. Okay. You both would be willing to entertain those nominations. Okay.
I will read the operations. A citizen member wishing to serve as co-chair must be nominated by an eligible voting member and seconded by another voting member.
You need a second for both.
Okay, so can I get seconds on each?
I second that.
Okay, so we have seconds for both. We have a second from Bob Leary on, Denise on Dan, and Bob Leary on Ron.
In the event of multiple nominations, a roll call vote with all eligible voting members will be taken, and the candidate with the most total votes will be declared citizen co-chair. A nominee reserves the right to call a silent paper vote, which will then be counted out loud by the school board representative.
Can we clarify who's voting? Because I'm not.
Well, we knew, yeah. So basically, I think it's,
These folks
yeah,
and
Ask the question too.
Ron,
Ron.
So is the,
And
my
Ray.
one other question, is the board of selectmen electing to vote? or
I
not?
can read out who the voting membership is.
Because I believe they're technically voting members, so are they voting or not?
I'm, so,
Voting membership is one school board representative, the selectman representative,
Yep.
and citizen representatives.
Right,
Non-voting members are budget committee representative per the budget committee vote in
Right.
1223 and ex officio membership.
right. So technically, one of you could vote,
One of you
and one
could
of the
vote.
board of selectmen could vote. So I'm just going to clarify.
Yeah,
Who is actually voting?
it's my belief that as a school board, we should abstain from this vote, only because I don't want it to be perceived that we're trying to.
That's fair. So I would like to know the position of the school board, the board of selectmen, is one of them voting?
Yeah, I think that's, I'm fine with the Board of Selectmen voting. Does anyone else have an issue with that?
Just wanna
Selectmen
make sure we're all
represent-
clear, so
Selectman
we-
representative is listed as voting membership. That was agreed upon in the operating.
Have one, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Perfect. I just want to be clear.
All right, so we have to call, it has to be a roll call vote?
Because you're over there. I knew there
Well,
was
you have to
gonna be-
close nominations.
All right, so do I have any further nominations? Seeing none, I will close nominations and we will proceed
You
with,
can ask if either one of them would request a silent vote.
do either of you request a silent vote? No?
Doesn't bother me.
Okay, all right. So I have to do roll call vote, or I could just do,
No, you can do a show of hands.
all right.
Roll call vote, yeah.
All right. The first nomination was for Ron, so I'll take show of hands for Ron, please. 1, 2. All right, I'll take a show of hands for Dan. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can vote for myself.
You can both vote for yourselves.
Okay,
All right.
is that 5?
Yeah, so that was 5 and 2. I'm gonna give you a vote for yourself. 3.
3.
3.
Great.
1. Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Rich
Yes.
Bobbin.
Yes, I'm not good at counting today. All right. So our citizen co-chair will then be Dan. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. If you'd like to, you can, if you want to drag that other chair up here,
I can just.
or you can sit up there. That's fine. Perfect. We'll have to figure out how we run the meetings. I've never co-chaired a meeting before, but I'm more than happy to share.
Yeah, I think you and I can
Figure that out.
figure that out. in the
Okay.
future.
Subcommittee, the next thing we're going to work on is subcommittee updates. So if you all recall, we had subcommittees formed, namely a information and IT subcommittee and a communications subcommittee. Both had directives that they were working on over the last few weeks. So we're going to start with an update from the information and IT subcommittee.
Sure. So the Information and IT Subcommittee, we met last Wednesday. Actually, it was kind of a ladder meeting because we met and then some people left and then other people joined in, but we were able to meet in the ladder meeting and we were able to tackle a few things. I'm going to let Dan speak to the Google Drive layout first, but one thing that we did do was really start to very pencil in a timetable or a list of action steps that kind of start today. And we had for a 2025 bond vote, for a 2026 bond vote, for no set bond vote, and then basically what we kind of decided was looking out if we wanted to go for something this March, what would we have to do ahead of time. We didn't get very far, I'll be honest with you. We kind of started with what has already been decided, which was a survey. And the conversation led to probably something for this March, probably not the thing for this March, but as a way to prepare us for perhaps a larger vote in March of 2026. Really, what we did discuss more in depth, and this was actually, it was kind of given to us by our new superintendent, Mr. O'Connell, which was the idea of a capital needs assessment. And we found 2 examples, one from the Dunbarton Elementary School and another one for, I don't know if it was the entire SAU 39, but there was at least 4 schools. So if you go to SAU 39, I found it through Google, and it has the Clark School in Amherst and a couple of the other ones. And they were both done by the same company. Not to say that we should go with this company, but it looks like On-Site Insight, and through doing a Google search, On-Site Insight seems to be the organization in New England or in the area that seems able and willing to do schools. Everyone else that does a capital needs assessment, it tends to be more for large residential or commercial. And so I actually made a copy for everyone just to kind of get a sense.
Dude, I recycle, so I don't feel guilty about it.
So I know I'm off mic a little bit here, but what was discussed, and I know it's later on in the agenda for the group to consider, but through conversations we thought this is a good idea to
Thank you.
pursue. However, if you look at the document, this document goes through a full analysis of a building, and then it also lays out a 20 and 30-year plan. And we don't know if necessarily that's what we want to do, because it seems to be this is more for a building that they are committed to, and it lays out years worth of expenses of upkeep. What we kind of decided is in the first section of it, that does seem like something worthy to at least investigate. And the term we kind of came up with, we came up with the term forensic audit, and then Dan kind of simplified it more colloquially and just said, we're just looking for a home inspection, you know, for the building. Just basically, let's get a home inspection. And so I know it's going to come up later, but if you look at this, not necessarily more towards the financial grid part at the end, but we think the first section would be something to at least investigate in terms of scope, cost, and then feasibility and viability to pursue something like this for GMS, so we can get a better sense, another set of eyes that says this needs to be replaced and the going rate is this, or it's not worth investing in this, rather replacing this. I just think, again, it's another set of eyes that we could put on it, knowing full well that none of us knew the actual cost of this, and I don't think we can fully make a recommendation to actually do this until we know what the cost is. And I think, I don't want to speak for the subcommittee, but I think the general intention was that this would not be a raise and appropriate cost, but if it's something that we could utilize the trust funds that we have set aside for this work to maybe get a jump on.
If it wasn't too absorbent, we have no idea what this.
We have no, and
This cost, whether it's 100,000 or 500,000.
No, this would be an updated version almost of the H.L. Turner report, which
That's
cost
what I was-
20 grand.
yeah, the H.L. Turner is in looking at this, H.L. Turner is an architecture firm, and this doesn't seem to be an
Right.
architecture firm. This tends to be more
But it's
property management.
a very similar format to what was presented there, because they had the 5, 10, 15.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we are missing, from my understanding, is do we even have a full set of O&Ms that tell you when to change various things in our buildings? So from that perspective, at least we'd have a list of what we need to replace when for long-term planning. But we already have a bunch of this framework. So to me, it just,
How old is the HR Turner report?
2018, I believe,
2018, so,
or 2017.
I think you're right, 2018, I think.
yeah.
'Cause I remember sitting in and scoping them out.
I mean, I guess my concern is costs have grown exorbitantly.
So if it was 20 grand then,
Yeah, well, I'm looking at even just cost of equipment,
Well,
right?
yes, but-
Is- So.
oh, absolutely. So we'd have to update, but I'm saying
Right.
if the cost is, can we absorb it?
Well-
If we know that in 2018 it cost us 20.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
cost us,
yeah.
and then precedent wise, that was a warrant article.
Right.
So, yeah, and so I guess the other question is, given that we have the Turner report and given that your consideration is costs, you know, we have had Kyle Barker updating, which I did get an update
Right.
from him today. We did ask him not to come because we have a lot to cover, but
Right.
they did finish their updated work with Bonnet, Page and Stone to update costs. So again, I guess the question would be, would we be getting something different, or would we be doing what has been done in other, you know, I mean, this looks like very valuable information.
In looking at this, it doesn't look like you get specific prices. You kind of get they list it. I don't know what the term is, but it's basically going market rate. You know, it's
Probably pull it out of like the
It's a
CSI.
different approach. What Kyle's looking at is rehabbing the whole building. This is essentially, this is a maintenance approach.
Well, what Kyle has brought forth, I believe, is itemized elements of the building that, and what the cost would be to repair or replace them.
No, I disagree. From the standpoint, he's looking at it from a total renovation process.
But was
What-
broken down by elements, though.
Yeah, but you can't just pick one element and go do them.
Why not? You can't pick an HVAC system and go do it.
Because as I can speak to it when I read the memo, but long story short, he's looking at the total rehab of the building, which is, if you remember, kicks in all the codes. It is essentially a gut job of the building and rebuilding it back versus taking a system and working on the boilers, working on the heating system, working on some electricals over here, essentially a deferred maintenance approach. He's looking at making the building new, meeting all the codes is doing that. And as you remember him saying, is you just can't take one piece of it and go do the mechanical in his concept where it all comes out, because you have to take ceilings down, so now if you're into the ceilings, we need to do all the electrical, we need to do all the plumbing.
Well, what I recall him saying about that was you can take the ceilings down, but does it make sense to put the old ceilings back up, or does it make sense to put new ceilings back up?
Makes no sense to put the old stuff back up.
So
That's what I understood him to be saying.
You touch the current ceiling and it's not,
It may not go back up.
what,
it's not the same condition that you found it first posted in.
in reviewing this with Mr. Mitchell and Ray, what this is looking at is, I think, getting at more of what Ron was looking at for that forensic inspection. Are the joists really rotting? Is the foundation really being undermined and washed out, right? What this report provides is a capital needs assessment as to how to go fix those things that are identified as they're identified versus with a ulterior plan of we're doing
Understood.
a rehab and a renovation. What I like about this is, and this is not a knock on Kyle or his previous work, it's by a completely independent company that has no affiliation with the town in the last 5 years.
Sure.
So the optics of it is, we hear you, we're now going out of house, and we're going to the person that's done this before that we have zero affiliation with.
I mean, I think there's no harm in finding out the cost of it,
No.
right? Like we lose nothing by doing that.
Yep.
So I think if it's the will of the committee, we can have someone reach out and get a cost. And I think it would also be very pertinent to see if they would be, I don't know how far they would go, but if they would be willing to at least take a look at the Turner report and tell us how what they would produce would either be like or different from the
I
Turner
don't
report.
know that I would give that to them. I would want if you want fresh eyes and fresh and clean optics,
Yep.
you can't give them the information up front. I mean, that's
I
preloading
guess
the
I guess I'm
gun.
just trying to. I guess when we're trying to make a determination of it, is like to Carrie's point is like, are we going to be paying for the same thing twice? I guess that was my big
When you say,
question.
give it to who you're talking about?
to these
Or
folks.
at least, or maybe not give them the whole report, but at least give them
Who's them?
the on-site insight.
Whoever runs the capital
I
assessment.
mean, by the time they get somebody to do this, the information in that report's outdated anyway.
Sure.
Some of the items may have been addressed, some of them may have deteriorated to a point beyond what's on there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna pay for the report, we should do it correctly and just have them generate a new
Gotcha.
document.
Okay. Yeah, that
Clean hands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that
walk in
also-
with clean hands. They don't have any.
And
Baggage.
optic wise too, you don't have to worry about people like, well, but you guided them toward a certain answer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
This,
Yeah.
that, and the other thing. If they're gonna be, if the whole point is it's an independent review.
Yeah.
It should be independent.
I wasn't thinking to that point of it. I was thinking to the point of it of your question of did we already pay? Are we redoing something we already did?
I mean, as a taxpayer, I would be a little, but then again, I was also annoyed when that report was shelved 6 years ago. So if this one actually has a commitment that we would do something with it, then I might be more willing to support it.
Should there be a motion to
There
that
should be.
idea?
To suggest it. to
A
recommend
mo-
it.
yeah,
Somebody has to reach out. Who's being nominated to reach out?
Well,
Well, again, I don't know if we
it's the
have the
person we
authority to
fired.
reach out.
Make a motion to nominate Brian. How's that
No,
work?
no. I think it's just. Are we moving
wait,
to?
no, can I, well, you're getting, well, in fact, that's the last item in your agenda is professional services. But if you're going out with that type of work, it's gonna be more than $20,000, you need a procurement process. And it's
Yep.
likely gonna be more than 20,000.
First off, also,
well,
our role is to recommend the board to make an action.
Correct.
I
But
understand.
what we're discussing right now is only whether to reach out to them to find out what the cost is.
It is not to do
And that would be
report.
through the school board. That wouldn't be.
But
the
again,
subcommittee.
our role is to recommend to the
Yes, that
board
would be the
to
school board.
investigate.
Recommend the board to move forward with this, so yes,
Right.
you should vote.
So I've looked at this for all of 2 minutes, and this doesn't look to me like how to rehab the building. It looks to me like this is the maintenance plan for the next X number of years.
Well, but I think it also identifies
And
like
that's why we sussed out that when you look at the whole thing, that's what it is. But like the first section where it's really kind of that forensic audit, and that's why I don't know if there's savings, if on-site insight would be willing to break it out in part and say like we don't necessarily want the 20-year plan. We really just want kind of that
State of affairs. Right?
the home inspection.
May I speak a little bit on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Of
Yeah,
course.
so, this is coming from SAU 67, which is where I was previously as the high school principal. And this was the precursor to a construction, project at Dunbarton Elementary where they expanded the school. So they had, this group come in to go through and be like, if we're gonna do this addition project, is there other stuff we should do while we're at it, right? Because we're gonna do all this construction, there's other stuff that needs to be fixed, so they had the whole building looked at, and made decisions off of this. So some of that year planning was, well, if we're gonna bond, I don't remember exactly how long their bond was for the project, but if we're gonna bond this out 20, 30 years, and there's something else that needs to occur in that 20 or 30 years, does it make sense to include it in that bond, so on and so forth? So that's, listening to everyone and talking, remembering this project and bringing that up, that sounds like what this group is looking for. Like, okay, if we're gonna look at GMS and we're gonna figure out what work needs to be done, whether it's renovation, rehab, whatever the case may be, it's not just like, we gotta kind of plan that out, as everyone knows, for like multiple years, right? Like, the bond's gonna be 30 years, and in year 25, we need to do a roof, right? Like, we should do it within the 30-year window, right? So this is where like that idea came for them. That's just one town. Even within the SAU, Bow went with a slightly different direction, and they went to their big construction project that they're doing right now. They actually had that Turner Group come in and do their report, which is different, than what they did because of what their needs were. So I'm not saying this is the 100% way, but listening to conversations at the meetings I've been in, this sounded more like what people were trying to chase down. What is the condition of everything? And as we project that out, like, does it make sense? If something needs to be, it's okay right now, but in 5 years it's going to be needed to be replaced. Let's know that now so we can plan ahead with it and
Like
stuff.
the surprise of the roofs where, oh wait, we thought the roofs are good, but oh wait, they're at the end of their life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is where the end of the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-year plan of this maintenance,
Yeah.
I like that look. And because it tells you, you know what? HVAC equipment's good for 25 years.
Yeah.
So in a 30-year bond, you're going to replace that equipment at least once.
Yeah, and that's actually what it led to in that district, is they did a 50-year CIP plan, right? Like, obviously, that's gonna change over 50 years quite a bit, but they mapped out significant CIP idea, like, okay, we just replaced this roof on, the elementary school in this year, we're gonna project that out. I'll talk about high school since that's where I was. We replaced the sunroof, main roofing in the building 3 years ago. So on the CIP plan now, which would be now 27 years down the road, is that replacement again, right? So people can kind of see that out long-term. And that's public information for everyone to see. And there's other warrant articles, won't bore everyone with all that like is directed towards that plan and so on and so forth.
So what we would end up with from this would be something that we could look at, just correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just make sure I understand. Something that we can look at that would help guide us in determining, can we realistically take an approach of just going and doing maintenance stuff? Or is it so, exorbitant that we need to look at a full-blown renovation? Or is it, whatever, right? It's gonna help guide us towards something like that. And then the only other piece of that, the only other piece that this wouldn't equate to, that we would have to bring in as a committee, would be the educational and programming considerations that we can't get in something like
And I
this.
think that's like, I obviously, I don't know your guys' Turner report inside and out, but that was one of the big differences that the architects taken into consideration. It's just not like, how is everything working? It's like, how does it work educationally? Like, that's the difference when you do like more of an architectural type of review of this, at least in my experience when I've read them, is that this is just like literal nuts and bolts, right? Like, how is the skeleton of your building, the structure of your building, and stuff like that.
And our conversations the other day did lead into, to start to talk about the educational operational issues where we're done with Dan. And, ways to mitigate those and what would make it better. I mean, I think the first phase, and what I said originally was, let's find out what's wrong with the nuts and bolts.
Right.
And then
And
the
that's
second
what
thing
this
is,
does, right.
so now we know I think right now, we need to make a decision of what we're gonna do, right?
Right.
We already know the nuts and bolts are not good and they're rusty and some of them are old.
Right.
So we need to make a decision whether we're gonna, to look at a new school, look at a major renovation, or repairs, right? We have three things really, and in that, repairs are never gonna address the educational, operational issues, so we come back to major renovation, seeing that the mandate, or perceived mandate, was a new school isn't gonna fly because of the costs.
Right.
So, I think as we do, we're at that point where we need to start making some of those decisions, and
to tie back to previously what I mentioned too, we kind of we talked a little bit, not explicitly, but that some of this, if we do pursue this, we also don't know how long that takes. So to kind of come up with your action steps and your calendar of decisions, it's hard to do that too when we don't investigate that, to know there's a 3-month turnaround, there's a 9, what's the turnaround?
they may not be able to get till it's the next year.
So if it is going to be 9 months, then time is of the essence, and we need to move now because we want it done. But if they say 6 weeks, I don't know if I'm saying that, but then okay,
I know how long it took to get the H.L. Turner report, and it wasn't as detailed, so yeah, I'm not going to go 6 months.
So, procedurally then, it sounds like to me what would make the most sense, tell me if you think I'm wrong, would be to have the superintendent reach out to this company to find out those questions. What is the cost of something like this? What is your timeline of something like this? And probably report back to this committee over email, because we don't have our next meeting for a few weeks. And I would presume that if this committee wanted to address this with the school board, we would want to get it addressed with the school board sooner rather than later if there's a timeline, no?
Well, one question would be, would the results of the survey at all impact whether we move forward with this or not? Because if people decide that they'd rather go LMS to pre-K to 6 and CHS 7 to 12, do we need to spend $50,000 investigating GMS?
So I agree with you, but here's the one thing that I think that we get feedback on all the time, which is there's always going to be some portion of people that say, but you didn't really figure out this, right? And I think that we probably do.
I think we have to move forward simultaneously.
Right.
Yeah, I was just saying.
I think we probably
It's not gonna be that quick.
On that type of idea, the kind of combination stuff, so what would happen to the third building?
I know what I would do to the third building, but the question is, what do the taxpayers want to do to the third building? So
And
my concern would be, we've already spent a small fortune investigating GMS.
I agree, yeah.
Are we going to throw more money at it?
No, I disagree with you. We have not investigated what we need to investigate at GMS.
All right, fine. We've spent a small fortune developing plans for a new GMS that have gone nowhere. So my concern is, if we spend money to investigate GMS and then choose to not incorporate GMS, well, now we just out the window.
Well,
So I
can I just respond to that? And I don't know if you read what I have to say later. But if you do any planning, it's gonna cost you some money, and it's not chump change. To really analyze anything to the degree that you get the answers that you need, you have to spend money. You have to spend money. In fact, one of the things that I've referenced in there is the New Hampshire DOT recommendations for planning of a major project. And it says you need to develop plans to at least a 50% level before you know. And if you're doing a major, either the renovation of GMS or a new school, that's over $1 million. So, let me just finish. So the point being is, if we're talking worrying about $20,000 or $30,000 to get some assessment, we are shortchanging us looking at it with a level of degree that we need to spend on it to get real answers. What happens is, just like we've had, Kyle come in here, every time, and he says it, every time he comes in, the numbers change because something else changes. And those are conceptual numbers. They're at best give you a range, but they have no specificity that helps you understand what the real problems are. So the point being is, I don't think you're gonna get out of this without spending some money, and it's gonna be in the thousands.
But in fairness to Carrie's point, though, what Carrie's saying is, we at one point had 9 options, right? You could spend $500,000 on 9 options, but ultimately what she's saying is, if you don't know what the community wants, is it worth spending money on that options?
Should we transition into the plan to go over the survey right now so that we can?
Well, But hold on one second, because the final piece of what I was gonna say is, I think we need to figure out what it costs, right? If it's
nothing wrong with asking what it
50,000,
costs.
right, there may be a price point at which we say, if it's $500,000, we might say, ooh, maybe we should find out what the community
I
wants.
think we have a different price point, but.
Well, I agree,
But at the same point, I'm like, in order to direct this, we need to know what are acceptable answers. So if we're gonna spend money, we at least need to be able to know what are the parameters within which are acceptable to the community to begin with.
I think the only thing, going back to Ron's point, is that we have this building, and so the default answer is that we're stuck with this building, and we're stuck in this building in perpetuity. So with that piece of it, I don't think it hurts to look at this, but I do agree, if this is a very costly thing for us to do, it may make more sense to investigate what the community input is before we incur the cost.
Again, I think we go back to, you can do both. We can reach out to the company and get an idea of what this is gonna cost. In the interim, we need to move forward with the survey, and there's more than one or two options here.
And
There's not just do nothing or build a new school. There's a lot of stuff in the middle.
And again, in talking to the subcommittee, our intention was that this could be something that we could utilize the trust fund that is sitting there, money that has already been, collected. That would be a use of
That's
of
a
those
permissible use of those dollars. We used it to do something at the last meeting.
funds. To pay Kyle's
Correct.
invoices.
I mean, and the other thing, right, is as we discussed at the subcommittee, right, to do that could be, that's the 2025 vote. Do you want to go actually have this done? Let's say it does cost you $500,000, which I'm not.
Which is not Carrie's number, just to be clear.
Which
I'm just saying that I'd be
I'm
asking
also
for
not sure if you're
permission.
far off. I mean,
Yeah.
it costs a pretty penny to do what they're doing.
Sure.
But is that the 2025 vote? And then
Sure.
the intent of that is to take that after the 2025, and then that guides the 2026 big vote going forward.
Same, my home inspection cost me $550 when I bought my house. It should be more than that, right?
So, all right, so with that said, I want to keep this moving along. We are trying, I've been encouraged to try to do more voting, or committee voting. So, with that said, is it the will of the committee to have the superintendent reach out to this company, gather us some more information about costs and timelines, and then bring that back to this?
Or you're recommending
making
to
a
the
motion?
school board to have the superintendent, because you can't direct the superintendent from this committee, right?
But is there, is there
I
a
just wanna
problem
make
with
sure
him? We're not asking him to engage in any contracts.
I just want to make sure we don't step on any toes by our.
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think there'll be a problem with the board. if-
Superintendent only works for the school.
Right, we
That's it.
can't, this committee.
I think making a phone call to this company would fall into my job responsibilities.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, I want to make sure we don't get the, well, you.
If
This
there
committee or not this
If there
committee,
was
I think
any,
it's okay.
if there was any cost involved with this, I would 100% agree with you. We're not asking him to incur, please don't incur.
I'm not gonna a single penny, don't worry. I'm gonna make
That won't
one,
go well.
I'm gonna make one phone call.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Just
all right, so
exploratory.
that's the direction we're gonna go in. All in favor of that, raise your hand. Perfect, great.
Can I ask one other question?
I
Oh, go ahead.
All right, everybody
need
hold your
numbers.
hand up so she gets.
Hold your hand up and keep talking.
Just see if there's anyone that objects.
All in favor. Anybody object, you can't vote.
Does anyone object? That's gonna be much easier.
Unanimous.
There we go.
Perfect.
No one objects.
What I'd like to ask Brian is, in addition to that, I'd like to know whether there's a resource within the New Hampshire Principals Association or something like that, that has a means in which, how do other schools handle their maintenance, scheduling, and actually work? And I'll jump to where I'm thinking quickly, so we don't get too far. I would actually like to see us consider retaining a property-type management firm who would have resources available on an as-needed basis to respond to things that we plan for, but also have emergency response to, and they're on call.
So the only consideration with that is that we do have unionized support staff.
And I understand, with the exception that, as you've pointed out, we've been unable to get things done at times. So we would,
We would have to go to them and get it.
and I fully agree,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
As
long as we're clear.
Thank you for that, and
I don't want them to think that we
No.
are talking about replacing.
No,
replacing our-
as a for instance.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to compliment Dave, you know, and his team, right off the bat. They just are so short-staffed. Like, for instance, the fascia boards around the old section, still has chicken wire on it. You know, a property management firm, you could get a price to replace all the fascias around the board, if we had them on call. They would respond to things like that. That we, you know, they don't have enough hands on deck. So I guess if you can understand what I'm suggesting
Yeah, kick
is
the
how
tires
are some
of
of the other school
districts.
districts
Yep.
handling those types of, we'll call it maintenance efforts that's beyond the scope of the, I don't want to use our maintenance, our onboard maintenance staff, is that the way to say it?
Yeah, at different schools, just give you a quick cliff notes,
Yeah.
I've worked in a couple other school districts, is every school district has their own way of doing it.
Oh, I'm
Some
sure.
of it is
That's why
size
I'd like to-
dependent. You know, at the school district, this sounds silly, but it's an important thing, like pest management, right? Like, true pest management is
Right.
outside the realm of your facilities people.
Correct.
In a school. So like, we had contracted services with specific pest company, right? They
Same
come
like
in and
plowing.
skip
We have somebody else that does
everything.
plowing,
Yeah,
that kind of
like
stuff.
That type of stuff. Other bigger school districts, Timberlane, where I had, for example, they had in-district person exclusively for HVAC, an in-district person exclusively for electrical needs and stuff like that, because they're a bigger district.
Right.
You know, they were operating with 7 different buildings or 8 different buildings, whatever it was. So they could have that. So everyone's got their own quirks and their own ways, but I can definitely get some more
Bedford, I know
information.
Bedford had a, in-district carpenter / handyman and in-district electrician.
Right, that's how I started my career. I was an electrician for the Lancaster Central School District, 9 buildings, and we had 6 people on the maintenance staff and 5 people on the grounds. You know, and we were dedicated to just doing, you know, the electrical and steam and, you know, plumbing for.
With that said, they also know how to push a snow blower in the winter and, you know.
Yeah, I did plow for the grounds crew a couple
Okay,
times.
so is that
Awful.
we have a good direction for the superintendent on this? I want to keep this moving because we got a lot to cover. So anything else from information in IT?
Yes, can we get back to the structure for organizing the Google Drive and have a quick talk about School Dude?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or School Failure Dude? I don't know. The School Dude did not get an A grade.
I could tell you that Dan tried to explain it to me, and I was lost because it came from an engineering world. But when I saw the spreadsheet, I was like, okay, now I get it.
Makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, it's a stared tiered.
I was gonna say,
system.
is there a way to get it up on that easily?
Is there?
It's over there on the floor. DMI
I need the
board.
HDMI.
I don't see it.
That's an easy one. It's just easier instead of me trying to explain it.
Yeah. Now, I will say is that while the spreadsheet makes sense, I will work at a draft on how I can make that look sense with the world of Google and
So-
icons and other
Yeah.
jazz.
As Dan's getting that set up, do you want to just give a quick background on what School Dude is and how we use it?
So, School Dude is outside in the world, right? There is COTS software, COTS commercial off-the-shelf software for preventative maintenance, and I'll call it work tasking. School Dude was originally presented by Siemens. It is now called Brightly. School Dude, the software no longer exists. It's now called Brightly. And by the looks of it, it's an old version of the software that you guys have. It's also an HTML web page reported. But the way that it was instituted was typically with these types of softwares, there's a setup period of, I only need these 15 icons, or I only need these 15 groups. Yeah, what happened was you guys got all 900 of them.
I showed it to them.
It's crazy.
I mean, there's over 50 different options in there just because whether it was done originally or that way, or it just kept popping up, I need this, I need this, I need this. It just ends up, what I would see, and I look at it as from a user experience, and I'll go from the teacher's experience, is which option do I need? I need to replace my trash barrel. Is this maintenance? Is this procurement? Is this business admin?
And I can tell you, on the user end, I shared this with them, it's the same system that I have to use to report a leak in the roof, a mouse in the building, and then I need the custodians just to set up an assembly in the gym. It's the same system. And now to go further, and I'm going to admit human error on my own part. This morning, or actually last night, storms came through, knocked out some transformers on CBH, and from my understanding, most people were back online around 9:30 last night. When the staff arrived at GMS this morning at 5:30, GMS was not online because there's a quirk at GMS, which is that when the power comes on, it doesn't always come in the building. Now, in an operational system, I would have a way to report that and log that and get it repaired. I got a text at 5:45 this morning. I immediately texted Dave, we don't have power, and I immediately texted Brian, just so you know,
That was great.
we don't have power. That is how.
Always nice to hear from you.
But
Always nice that early.
by 7:15, Dave was in. He did his thing. Which, by the way, if Dave ever goes away, I don't know, because that knowledge exists in Dave's head and with Dave's hands. Power was back on. So that happened. It was resolved. There is no record of that
Right.
happening anywhere.
And that would have taken an hour in school, dude, and you wouldn't know if anybody did anything with
Which, by the
it.
way, I also need power to use school dude.
And it doesn't go to the people that it needs to go to necessarily.
Oh, it's not
either.
available as an app on your phone or whatever, which
So
is.
question, is there a
common today.
more updated program that we should be advocating for that would better utilize?
Well, we talked about it too, and I said, because school dude is so clunky, and I hate that, I don't utilize it as well. And I often tell, if a teacher reports something, I said, can you do a school dude, and then follow up with an email, I'll make sure that I'm online, and then I can follow up on your behalf. If we had an easier to use system, I would take that out of the hands of my teachers and staff and just give it to me, Maura, and maybe one of the office staff. I would just say that because, oh, there's a leaky roof, and I have my phone, and I go, leaky roof, and I know that it's going to be taken care of. But the fact that if I'm walking through the hall and that comes, then I have to remember it till I get back to my computer, log on to, and they saw what school dude looks like.
Then if it's old,
yeah.
is there still
There is.
support, is there any support for the current programming system we use?
So
Because if there's no support, then we should look at newer models.
So Brightly, I don't know because it's now called Brightly. I don't know what Siemens will do in terms of support. Never looked into it that far.
Right.
To answer your first question, there are a plethora of other software systems out there. I talked with some of them. There's people that will integrate AI and predictive maintenance and predictive analytics to, I replace these fluorescent light bulbs and it'll be auto logging. There's
So
much
it'll tell you in
nicer
3,000
systems.
hours you need, yeah.
Or it'll even tell you, like, Dave claims a ticket and says, hey, I'm starting this ticket. Oh, I finished this ticket because I closed it out and I'm saying it's done. It will auto log, hey, to change a fluorescent light bulb takes 0.2 hours. So now you can start, if I have 5,000 light bulbs, it's going to take every year. I got to replace all the bulbs. It's going to take X long.
So, so one thing to note then is,
School dude is still current. It's still supported by Brightly, just so.
Yeah.
this is a timely conversation though, because soon the school board is gonna be looking at their budgeting.
Yep.
And so they can look at pricing out new software and what the cost is to migrate and all that other stuff. So if we have recommendations that they can look at, it's actually a very timely conversation. So thank
Yeah.
you.
So I guess the question is, is this something that you're comfortable like figuring out, or how do we figure it out, right? Like, 'cause this is not my realm.
I mean, myself, I know Bruno is involved with kind of down the same lines as I am with PM and commercial maintenance and stuff like that. So I'm sure that we can come up with recommendations and I can take that on.
Which I think would be awesome because an
phenomenal.
administrator could have a different opinion than the end user of your maintenance
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Coming at it with a different perspective of,
Yep.
this is what's seen, this is what I'd like. So I think that's awesome.
Do you know in other districts that you've
Thank
worked in
you
what
for
they've
being
used?
willing to take
Yeah,
that on.
at Bo, we use paper and pencil. For like maintenance and facilities needs. Like now we had a different system for technology stuff, which mirrored what Dan was talking about, right? There was tickets and it could predict whatever. Tech
Is-
people loved it.
Is School Dude what we're using for IT as well? Like for like
There's a separate IT ticket report screen that they use currently.
School Dude do that though? Because we do have to know if there's other things that if we,
That if you cancel it, right.
right,
You,
like
you
if
gotta
there's
know
other
how
elements that are not
involved is.
physical
I
maintenance.
mean, they use School Dude for maintenance, for facilities requests, for IT.
So you do use
Someone
it.
in the
Setup.
community wants to use the
Scheduling, yeah.
building.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
PTO, when they do like pump requests, they go through school dude
Yeah.
to let us know that
School-
like they need
school
6 trash cans and how many tables.
So it's important for Dan to know what other things besides just building maintenance.
I can connect you with Dave
Facilities
Ross and Chris Jamrock.
AV requests, technology requests.
So it's more than just a maintenance tracking or ticket system. It's got basically ticketing for just about everything. Okay.
And maybe if it's updated to the newer version and
It's slicker,
the-
right? It's
and
newer.
re-implemented, right, with, you know, a proper setup
With fewer
process.
options,
Yeah.
432.
Because I have to tell you, it's, you know, there's a page of icons and Dan's like,
But it could be this, but it could be this, but it could be this. I
Well, then I have to
That
make
could
it
be this,
because there's
yeah.
not one that's clearly like
Then you
I
have
need the gym
analysis
set up for
paralysis.
4th grade celebration.
but again, back to the argument about the facilities committee taking care of things that overarch all the schools. School dudes used in 3 schools, you know, so this is not GMS centric, but it certainly is central to the conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I'll take a look at it, and whoever else is interested, I'll take whatever inputs and help in connection with Dave and whoever else is.
I mean, I know our
like, main
administrators
users.
need to be on board with all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
too.
No,
'cause-
I understood. I mean, first stab would be is what if we just updated the software to the latest Brightly version, right? Because they may answer a lot of those problems and come in. Okay.
All right.
So, the drive. What I have implemented in the past to kind of organize information on very large government contracts is a very basic architecture of you can have all the folders in the world you want, but you prefix the folder with a 3-digit number. And what this allows you to do is set your order of precedence of how those folders appear in the folder. So then that way, if you have something like meeting notes and agenda, it's not buried 3 screens down and you're scrolling. You can set that as 000 blah. And so then that way you can set it. So then this way, and there's a way you can do it of where you can skip by tense. That way you don't have to reorganize the whole folder structure and go from there. The other biggest thing about folders is everything has an archive. So if you jump into your top drive home page and then you go one layer down to like meeting information, the archive is all your meeting notes from the previous year. Because then I would say you should have a folder for the current year's meeting notes. And the reasoning is you only want your current information at top level within a folder. So then that way, if you got 7 revisions of, a bill of materials, I don't want to have to figure out, is it version 15 or 15.5 is the current one that someone's working with. So that is kind of just how we have laid it out. And that prefix will subsequent to your subfolder levels as well. So you can do as many as you want, as little as you want, but I mean, 3 digits gives you 1,000 different folders. If you have 1,000 folders in any one drive, we're doing something wrong, and going down that path.
And we also discussed that this works in the Google Drive if you view it in list view and not icon view. Icon view gets a little clunky and it doesn't work as well because icon view sometimes reorders based on usage as opposed to numbers. So if you look in list view, it makes a whole lot more sense.
And then the other big thing that we have done is file naming convention. If you just scroll to the right, again, this is to me is just preference. Is we always preface the file name with the current date. So year, month, day. That way, again, it'll filter based upon time. And then we always had a rev at the end. So _rev AB or 1 through whatever. And again, it's just to show this is the latest working copy, this is the latest time someone did it. If we're gonna do a capital improvement plan, right, it's for a site or the district, it would be today's date, so again, you can quickly filter, inverse order of 2024 is at the top, 2020 is down at the bottom. That's it, very basic. What actual folders we want or something, I really didn't dive into, is just more of the structure and the architecture of how to organize it from the beginning.
Well, I was gonna say, we did discuss simplifying it at the front page, which is just, everything is either meetings, having to do with GMS, LMS, CHS, or the district. Everything should fall into one of those four categories. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because I think also, we have the organization and then you have the mechanics of the project. The mechanics of the project means we have to decide on folders, and then we need to empty all the existing folders, and then reorganize all that comes out of all those folders.
Yep.
And from there, it may end up, that doesn't fit in any folder, and we may hand I'll call it a potpourri folder.
Well, I think there's also quite a few folders that are meetings that would overlap and things that relate to, if we're talking about the consolidation, is it LMS, is it CHS, is it
Copy, paste.
Would it get more than one folder?
Or it just goes under district.
District, yeah.
District, yeah, we talked about having a district
and
line.
I'm not opposed, right? That was just my initial stab at what I thought top level folders would be. I have done a miscellaneous folder. I have done a personal folder, so then that way, if I wanted to go work on something and I don't want it up to the general community, I can post it under just what I'm working at, but I can access it anywhere. So it was an initial stab, but the danger that you'll run into is like, well, this can apply anywhere, is gonna be, well, fine, then I'm just gonna leave it at the top end. So then it just becomes a data dump.
Yeah.
Which is trying to tell 200 people on a large program not to do that is difficult. So.
The other thing about making the copy, cut, paste is if there's any changes to those documents.
Shortcuts. Can't you do a shortcut to the original file?
You can, there's, I
Not
don't know if
easily in
Google
Google?
allows it, but you can get fancy, like at least in the Microsoft
That's what I'm used to. I just
system.
put a shortcut to the file itself, and then.
You can do a
kick you
shortcut.
over.
I mean, essentially, you could also just make it a shared file, right? And you can post the shared file on multiple locations or to multiple people, so then one person updates it, everybody's gets updated,
Right.
and stuff like that. I don't work in Google that often besides my Gmail, so.
And next level to this would be a real document management system, right? That you put
Yep.
it in there and it would keep it organized and index it and all the other fine things
So
that you can do
if
with
it's
technology.
the will of the full committee, I think the subcommittee, this can be where the subcommittee continues, is now kind of brass tacks time, where we just sit down with some computers next to each other and just start literally littering the drive and then cleaning it back up again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. It's phenomenal. Way over my head. I just need you to come to my office now. We don't operate like this in my little law firm, but it's amazing though. That's great.
What level of documents are gonna go into it? The reason I ask is this just for the FIC?
That's what we also discussed, that this is not the public folder. This is for the use of this committee so that we can find it. Then from there, we'd also have a public, because right now we were organizing the Google Drive, and the Google Drive right now is restricted access to this subcommittee.
We're gonna have to, when we get into the piece about retaining professionals, I think we're gonna talk about PR and someone to help with the actual website for the community, because that has been a nightmare to try to find. As you
Now,
know.
with that, I can say, within the Google Drive, you can have restricted access to the drive, and you can have universal access to folders within the drive. So to get into the whole shared drive, you need to be named as part of this committee, but to have access to the GMS drive within there, I can make the sharing of that folder to anyone with the link or.
Right, and
public
then you can
access.
post a link on the website to say, here's how you can go see it.
Yep.
And leave it as read-only.
Yeah, that's how we access like lunch menus and school calendars right now. Yeah. Awesome, great work.
Lunch.
Yeah, great work. Anything else from information in IT?
You want more?
No, I mean, I don't, but I don't want to cut you
It
short.
was a good meeting.
I don't want to cut you short, but we're good?
Yeah, we lasted longer than the school board last Wednesday.
We have. All right, let's keep moving because we got more to do.
I appreciate your passion and willingness, so thank you guys for taking that under.
Communications, yeah, come on up. Let's, you can stay up there, Dan. We can bring another chair up. It's all good.
Does anyone need to plug, did you send this to us?
Yes.
Alright, so. I'm gonna unplug so I can go to my email and not everyone can see it.
So our subcommittee is myself, Jason, Joe, who could not be here, Matt and Jen. And basically we were tasked to come up with a questionnaire to answer two questions. Why do you think warrant Article 1 failed? And 2, where do people want to go in the community going forwards? This was not to address the pricing of options, and it was not to address right now how to fund the project. This was a questionnaire, just why do you think it failed, and what would you consider potentially in the future? And we started by talking about timeline, and a couple of questions about the timeline is how long we want to keep it going, when do we start it, when do we end it. I love the idea that if we end it in November, it'll stay active through the election, which similar to the previous committee's questionnaire, they were at the polls. And I think that's probably where we're going to get our most feedback, by actively manning the polls and asking people to please answer the questionnaire. We talked about other ways to engage. Basically, any way you could think of to engage, we included. We talked about multiple Facebook pages, direct mails, email list, hard copies at all of the schools and town hall, town library. Possibly, if people are okay with it, going to the town events, the dump, golf courses and restaurants, if they'd be willing to have our questionnaires there. The over 55 or any other communities with a clubhouse who would like copies of it, we'd be happy to supply them. Also QR codes into the local newspapers, the Union Leader and the National Telegraph, and possibly community presentations. We talked about explaining to the community what the committee was, who makes up the committee, and why the committee was established to begin with. We talked about our goal for the questionnaire. Approximately 2,600 people voted on warrant Article 1 last year. So if you look about 3,000 people in the population, you want at least a 810 response rate for plus or minus 3%. Honestly, I found that online, and I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but we'd like to get as many people to respond as possible. Given that only 2,600 people voted, I'm hoping we could get a decent percentage of those at the polls, again, to take our questionnaire.
Excuse me, Peter, what was the response rate on the economic development one?
I
know that you
think we had like 1,700.
No one was like allowed to vote until they filled out the survey.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not if Diana was
They have to get back past my wife. Yeah, but there were people manning the polls all day, really, from 7 to 7, so I want to say it was 1,600 or 1,700 people took the survey. But we also did it via SurveyMonkey, which was free.
Yep.
We did things with the QR code at all the town sites. You could vote online. The only thing you couldn't do is people could vote as many times as they wanted. So, and we also asked, are you from town? Do you live in town? Do you work in town? That was kind of,
We talked about having identifying information on the questionnaire. Do we have people put their name? Do we have them put an email? Those people who really want to stuff the boxes have multiple emails like most of us do. So if they want to give us 6 different emails, if they really care, they probably have those many friends they'll bring along to the polls to vote anyway.
My question was more like the golf courses and the restaurants. What's the checks and balances from?
yeah, how do you keep it inside the town?
Yeah,
You have to trust people.
yeah.
At some point, it does come down to trust.
Because when I'm about to go golfing, I want to fill out a survey.
Especially at the 19th hole, right?
I mean, if it's on the traveling beverage cart.
Exactly. Yeah.
You get happier answers.
Exactly.
She has to wait long enough, you gotta give her a bigger tip.
We talked about starting the survey with the statement of need, why are we doing the survey? The warrant Article 1 failed. That we want to get the town's response to where they want to go. We're not trying to make any decisions ourselves as a subcommittee of the Fiscal Improvement Committee. We want to know what they want. And we are asking them questions that have previously come up as possible solutions to the overcrowding and state of the schools currently. The
Can I-
first,
Can I make some observations?
please,
A little bit of this statement is kind of leading.
we try to keep it as non-biased, so please, let us know where you can see any bias.
And I believe question 10 should not be there, because I don't believe that question 10 is an option.
You already done a 10?
Let's,
Yeah, if you read fast.
No,
let's do it in
there are
order,
people who
please.
support that, so don't.
If it was brought up, we included it in the questionnaire.
So for instance, in the last paragraph, in
Incendiary.
the description there, it begins with along with the new building.
I'm sorry, say that again?
In your
Statement of need.
statement of need, the last paragraph, which begins along with a new building. Previous suggestions have included renovating GMS with or without construction of a new building, consolidating schools, but there's nothing about maintaining the existing in here. Essentially referred,
It's referred by
doing deferred
renovation of
ma-
GMS.
renovation and responding to deferred maintenance are two different things.
Why don't we table that point until, because you have a lot that you want to talk about
Yes,
on
I do.
that, so why don't we table
Yeah.
that because I don't want to get into your whole point yet.
Okay.
Continue.
The first question, just basically, you brought up, Ron, and we all loved it. What's the best way for us to communicate with you? And we basically took that right out of your survey.
Yeah.
If there was a way, we want to hear from you. Second is, why do you think the warrant article did not pass? And this is an opinion question. And it gives you pretty much any choice you could have. The building was more than what was needed, the cost was too high, proposed location was unacceptable. Don't believe the options to reuse all or part of GMS was adequately investigated. The bond structure was confusing. The bond structure did not have a uniform cost a year, and the existing building is adequate for our educational needs as it currently is.
The only thing I would suggest is maybe including an other where you can do a write-in.
Perfect.
All the above.
Well, then you could check all of them.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it says check all
It
the
does,
slides.
sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't say that.
But I do think it's important to have other because we don't know, right?
Right.
We're just listing what we all believe are the existing reasons, but somebody could throw a curveball. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't even think of that.
Here comes that meteorite.
I think, even a question like a new building is not needed is a legitimate point in there from a survey point of view.
Isn't that covered with the existing building is
G.
adequate for our educational needs?
But a new building is not needed.
That's
That's
covered
what-
under other, so we're
G
good.
and other, yeah.
The third question, in determining a solution for the future needs, which do you think should be prioritized? One, the lowest cost option should be the top priority. Two, educational needs should be the top priority. Or three, the lowest cost options and educational needs should have equal priority.
Could we do a Likert scale there? I didn't even think about that, but where it's, you
that
go with
again?
the 0 to 5, where it goes,
Definitely.
it's a high priority, medium priority, low priority for each of those, so that people could pick, because for people it might be high, 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 or low, 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 or I don't care, I don't care, I don't care,
Make it a
whatever.
4-point Likert though, because if it's odd numbers, people always pick the
Yep.
middle.
A 4-point Likert.
You force them on either side of the neutral.
We could do that.
Oh, I hate those.
Thank you, educational surveys and philosophy class from undergrad.
I'm sorry?
So instead of select one, under 3, you're having them reply each of these with a 4 point.
I think so.
Which would mean that you could probably eliminate the equal priority thing, because you'd have a scale for each cost in
Yep.
education, right?
I don't know if I'd eliminate it, because the other two parts say exactly the right things. Education first, or cost first, or it should be equal, because that's an option. It should
But
say.
when they change it to 1 to 4, they're gonna see, if they rate both of them a 3, then it's equal, right? versus if they're one of them a 4 and one of them a 1.
Well, it's
That was
a
my
good
only.
point.
You could rank them both a 1, and you could rank the third question a 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep. I agree.
So, back to how it's written?
No,
Well,
keep it
no,
with the
they-
Laker, but with the 3 sections.
But do the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the scale for each one, yeah, I think it's perfect.
Because you could have a 2, 3, 4. You could have a 1, 1, 3. Yeah.
The next set of questions talks about the current deficiencies identified at GMS, including both structural and educational issues. The structural issues include moisture issues, inadequate heating and cooling, inadequate electrical wiring, lack of sprinklers, lack of a completely secure front office. Educational challenges include not enough classroom spaces for the core classes and lack of breakout spaces for special services and enrichment activities. The structural issues can be addressed with renovation of GMS with or without an addition. The educational issues can only be addressed with renovation of GMS and add an addition to the building. First question on that is, would you consider renovating GMS without adding an addition?
And again, without trying to, I think you've made too much of a supposition in you've made too much of a statement in the prologue there.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful what's in these paragraphs leading up to the
last two
questions,
sentences.
because it's
It's
a
leading.
I
pitch.
think what they were going for was, without background information on what has been presented, I think it's hard for people to answer some of these questions because they don't know what they're answering. I think was
Well, Well, so for instance, the second to last sentence begins, in fact, if I can make a suggestion, instead of using the word structural, could you substitute building? As, for instance, the current deficiencies in GMS include both building and educational issues.
Mhm.
I think
Sounds
that's a
good.
little more
Yeah.
specific.
Yep.
So then, the second to last paragraph, the building issues can be addressed with renovation of GMS, with or without addition. We don't know that yet.
And in the survey, it says there's a disclaimer, some of these choices may or may not be
Well, but.
possible after.
Yeah, but if
we
you're,
look into.
that's a fact. You're stating that as fact, the way it's written.
So what about,
Could be
it's,
addressed, may be addressed,
Well,
instead of
maybe
the
or-
addressed can be addressed?
if we're identifying, so the beginning is okay, right, is good.
Yes.
We're identifying the deficiencies, maybe strike the last 2 sentences. Because then you're saying, these are our problems, and then move in. Because you're right, to a point, we should not be saying, we can or cannot address these with or without additions, because we don't know that.
Right.
If we rearrange the school district,
Right.
maybe we can address these without
an addition.
without an addition.
And
I'm
how
okay
you
with that
go-
too, because the educational challenges include not enough classroom space implies that we need to, so we don't need to state that we need to add.
Does it make sense for us to go through the few questions that are under this header and then read
So-
about, like,
well,
just
yeah,
to
so
see-
ultimately though, if you strike the last 2, you're focusing on statement of fact without introducing the opinion.
Without leading.
Yeah, agreed.
I would agree with that. My concern is that people who haven't been watching these meetings as closely as we have don't know the difference. Why not just revamp the building? Why do we need an addition? If we can make the building structurally sound, what are we missing?
Well, your next
How
3
much?
questions basically explain that.
Oh, as long as you're okay with this last sentence being within these 3 questions, it basically is a duplicate of it. Would you consider renovating GMS without an addition? Would you consider renovating GMS with an addition? Those 2 sentences are repeated.
And can I ask you, what do you expect people to base their answer on when they see
This is-
that question?
This is their personal opinion.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, because I was sort of in and out when we had the conversation, but I think what they're trying to get at is, if you, for example, we've talked about like the consolidation thing, right? Like if we need to know if someone is vehemently opposed to that, like we need to know like what percentage of people, because we know not to pursue that option,
That's a question.
not to expend resources on pursuing that.
You're not going to be able to make that decision based on the survey that we get. If we get 200 respondents, which I think is a huge number, that is not necessarily going to tell you what the rest of the town is
So
going to
then
do.
how are we going to make a decision?
I
on
think
what to
they
pursue?
can guide us, but you can't just say, okay, we're going to throw this out.
But we've talked about incurring costs. We understand that we have to incur costs to pursue certain options. So we have to at some point be able to eliminate some options and figure out what direction we're going.
To focus in on what, if it's from 12 options
Right.
to 6 or 5 or 4.
So the point is, my understanding of the survey is that we're trying to figure out what option or options are we gonna focus on?
If
But-
people aren't
but
willing
if
to
there's
add
no
an
way-
addition, we shouldn't even look at it as
Because this
an
is cheap
option.
money for us to do this, than to figure out where to focus our actual dollars on, to look into the different options. 'Cause this is
Say that
relatively
again.
cheap.
We're
I'm
trying
sorry,
to.
say that again?
So
With-
doing a survey is relatively cheap for the town
Yeah.
to figure out, is the town even willing to do an addition or willing to consolidate schools? If the answer is no to both those, then don't waste money on figuring out,
Right.
digging into it.
We're trying to bring it down from 9 questions down to 2 or 3 that we'll spend more
Exactly.
money on.
My only concern is that I understand the point of what you're trying to do, but with the second statement on 4, 5, and 6 kind of leads the answer. So if we had just the question, would you consider renovating GMS without an addition? Would you consider renovating GMS and adding addition? Because you have information up above. Because if you're telling people that they're not gonna address the educational issues, but I don't know that that's true. Because if we did, later say, we are willing to consolidate or shift or whatever, I'm interested in a pre-K to 3, a 4 to 6, a 7 to 12, well, then we don't need an addition at GMS.
So it almost sounds like we need to kind of merge all these
Or
options
just strike the
together.
last questions, the statements.
Just ask the question and no comment.
Because my concern too is then people are gonna say, but you led the witness.
Right.
Yeah, the counterbalance on that though, that I think is a hard thing to address is there's certain information that if you don't have, it's hard to make a decision, right? Like I will always go back to your survey, which you guys did a great job on. But if you ask someone, you like farms? Do you want to see economic development? The answer is no. But they don't have the background information that the purpose for that would be to offset taxes.
But the implication is that the only way we can address any of
I
our
agree. I
educational
agree.
concerns is if we do this.
Right.
I'm saying, I'm not sure that that's accurate.
Right.
You can address it without the addition, but it requires restructuring.
I think if you look at all 9 questions and take them separately, we'll get the answers to the 9 questions. We may have people who like renovation and an addition.
Right.
And also may
Can
like.
I offer this suggestion? What if we ask questions 7 through 10 before questions 4, 5, and 6? That way, then they've already addressed the consolidation and district structure before they get into
That might
decisions.
make more sense.
Also, what I was just thinking, if the survey was segmented into sections to say one option, other options, background information, so that those details are there to say, this is only one option section. This is only, like, there are more below. Continue reading for more. If this doesn't work for you, keep reading.
Keep in mind too, length, right? People are gonna check out after what, 15, 20?
This is
a minute.
actually trimmed down.
No, I hear you.
It's hugely trimmed
It's
down.
only 10 questions. 10 questions is a survey that people will do.
Well, not if we keep throwing more information at people. All of a
Harry,
sudden,
if we-
it's
if
like
we
10
res-
pages in.
If we flip-flop sections 2 and 3, does that?
I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet.
What we could do is.
I mean, asking the.
Or even just saying, like, it would address the educational issues without requiring a restructuring of because.
What if it just said, if it would address the educational issues, would you be in favor of this? If it would address the educational, or,
What we could do too is take all the paragraphs out, put it in introduction, have it all flow down, and then ask the 10 questions. Then they have all the information ahead of time.
Are you raising your hand?
I am.
Oh,
I don't want to be rude and interrupt, and I did that before, I
Please.
apologize. There's a problem with this, 100% problem. If we have no way of making sure that people vote once, then how can we use it for any decision-making at all? If we need to be able to, whoever fills out the survey needs to be tested somehow. Otherwise, the information is, it's useless. It's absolutely
If I recall, the
unverifiable.
survey that the Economic Development Committee did, if people did it online, they could identify people coming from the same IP address and remove them if they voted multiple times.
So I don't want to get too far
I think
ahead.
it was.
I have it later in this, but one thing that we need to discuss is whether or not we pursue, ultimately this is a good base for what we're starting with, but whether or not we pursue professional help to administer something like this, to actually get it done right. Right. So we have that on the agenda to talk about.
like I said, I don't know how the school board or us could use this for any idea on setting direction for policy if you have no way of verifying that
Right.
somebody didn't fill
Someone
out
didn't
30
go,
of them.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to what Matt's trying to address with the administration of the survey.
Right.
The content of the survey, I'm in agreement with Carrie on the leading nature of the statements after questions 4, 5, and 6. Just from a pure optics standpoint, but I also agree with how do we get them the information. Now, whether it's another QR code and we can distill all of the information into 2 pages and say, this is background information for questions 1 through 3. Here's 4, 5, and 6, 7 through 10. Maybe.
That was the attempt. I think that was the attempt of what,
Right.
the precursors to the questions.
But I agree with Carrie of, have we investigated on how to address the educational deficiencies without doing an addition?
Can we convert, I'm sorry, go ahead, you have your hand up.
UNH has a cooperative extension that their whole department, all they do is administer surveys, take what you're looking for information, and they have the way to neutralize every question. We did it in Nashua when we had a culture and climate survey that had to go to the whole district in Nashua. It was, I can't remember what the money was, but it was relatively small money, considering the size of a district in Nashua. I'd be willing to reach out to ask information if someone would like us to see if they can look at our questions, because they can give feedback. It's people that are working on statistics and analysis.
And administrate the survey.
And they would administrate the survey.
Because I see question 10, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be,
We want feedback.
you know, my personal opinion, would you consider sending 9 through 12 grades out of the district high school and utilizing LMS and CH for the rest of the grades? It's incendiary. Might as well throw gasoline with a match in the air, because people are
Do you know
not
how
gonna
many people
go for
have
that.
said?
Huh?
I've had people say, I wish my kid had more options.
But that's
I-
also the only question that doesn't have any background information to
Yeah,
it.
it's-
For what it would cost, what it would, so.
So
again,
Or if there's any way
so
of
we
doing
did
it.
talk. So we, and it didn't make it onto this. We did. I 100% agree with that. We do need to have precursor information to that question
that from
that basically indicates some of the. Number one, there is a tuition
Right.
component of that, because some people will just think that it's free. Number two, we have no control over the tuition component of it, and we also have no control over really the content of the education. We have no say in the education.
And where would you send
system
them?
at that point.
And busing.
Or even a disc.
It's not even a practical thing.
And also, we need to be
System
able
would
to
take
reiterate the
We'll have a
fact that
conversation later,
They could do.
kids.
All right, hold on, we got,
Can I just mention one thing? As we were going through and doing the survey, we didn't personally necessarily agree with all these choices. These are choices that have been brought up at other discussions that community members have posted, that some of the upcoming high school students think is already happening.
No, we clarified it to the upcoming high school students.
Yeah, that was,
So, but it has been talked about publicly, and
Yep.
I don't think people are in favor of it, but that we can show that people are not in favor
Right.
of it.
right.
So if people aren't in favor, it gets 2 votes.
Okay.
If it's, people are.
I'll go
in
with that, it
favor-
just seems to be.
If you exclude it, then it's like you've just made choices of what's acceptable and what's not. Allow the voters to vote.
I agree with you. I don't think that there's enough support for that. But I do have to say that we did get like roasted over, you didn't consider this option either.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I'm looking at it as a practical person. Where are you gonna send them? Alvern?
right. But we still have
Then,
to ask the question. If 80%
Bishop
of people
Girton?
said yes
I mean,
to
maybe
that, then
we
we
send
have to
all
go
the kids to
actually
Bishop
investigate.
If there's interest, then you explore. If there's
Yeah.
no interest, it dies.
But I do
That's
think that
exactly
it is
right.
very important that we do give that precursor information to this so that people understand things like the reason that we have a high school is because at any given moment, the school that you're in can say, we can't accommodate you anymore. So there is a lot of precursor information that needs to be given for that question.
But then it becomes wordy.
It becomes way too wordy at that point, and people are going to check out after 5 questions. If
But
you have to read a
you can't ask,
Oh,
you can't ask the question without
well, and that's
accurate
where
information.
I think that's where the cover letter he
Administration-
talked
so-
about is.
professional administration of the surveys, that's where this is gonna help.
Right. We just have to give them the information. Like, you've done this already partially here, right? We have to give them the information of, like, here's the information we need the survey taker to understand when answering these questions. So you tell us how to do it. Like, I have no.
I can send you what I would consider as a precursor for it, because frankly, it's one that I think should be considered.
So,
Well, given well, it would be something along the line, given the declining enrollment and the declining size of high school classes, in order to provide more academic rigor and academic choice, should
Says the person who is concerned about leading.
What classes are we not offering?
No, this is the plus. This is.
What classes are we not offering at the high school?
There have been discussions in the past that you have to plan out your high school course selection years in advance and hope that something doesn't change.
It's not, but it's not accurate. That's not the day-to-day.
Okay.
That's not the day-to-day of how the school is running. That's just
Okay.
not an accurate statement to
So we
make.
don't have kids taking AP courses at Alvern because we
Okay.
can't support them
We
here.
had 2 kids take a
Okay.
class because we lost a teacher. That's not due to decrease in enrollment.
Okay.
That is no factor into that.
Okay.
So I do think, I don't want to get too far off topic on this. I think that we do have to ask the question. I do agree that I think that there is I don't think it'll be majority support for this, but we'll see, we shall see.
But again, it gives the opportunity to live another day or kill it with a statement.
Right. I agree that that's important.
because I also agree with, I've seen it all across the What's Up page of why don't we just do this?
What I would actually suggest you do in this question, instead of you tie it to eliminating a GMS, I would say, would you consider the option of some students at the high school level being allowed to go to other locations?
Shouldn't sound like have to be all or none.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Why does it have to be?
Because you gotta come to an area agreement.
Pardon
If
me?
you were to go down this road,
Yeah?
what you need to do is negotiate with the school an area agreement. Like, there
Well,
is
that's-
quirks, yes, Hooks is an example that sends their kids to multiple different high schools, but all your kids are going out of district at that point, and then you're negotiating multiple area agreements to do that, and there's all sorts of different quirks, which you can go down that road. But like, I mean, I guess it's not impossible, but I have not seen, we're gonna keep some of our kids at our own high school, and we're gonna send some of our kids out to district. Yeah.
There was a school board meeting in which that issue was brought up, where Hudson, if I recall correctly, approached Litchfield about combining.
They did not approach us about them.
That's not what that was about.
No.
They wanted to talk about.
Well, that's what it sounded
sharing
like in
res-
the-
More
in what I
sharing
heard.
resources.
Well,
Well, that might have been what you heard, but that's not what that was about. They wanted to talk about how the 2 schools can almost trade kids back and forth, so they allow more options between the 2.
And that's exactly the point. So for instance,
That doesn't solve anything.
that could potentially say, okay, we will, in fact, it was mentioned here that you sent 2 kids to an advanced placement in Hudson because that was offered. So,
I hear, I don't know if that solves facilities though, like, I think that's an educational thing.
and I agree, but say for instance, you have a classroom that you have 3 or 5 students in AP, and you can take that classroom and combine it over in Hudson, and now you have 7 students there, that means there's a classroom available.
So ultimately,
Yeah.
we're going beyond the scope of what this, I can't believe
Right.
I'm saying this, because I usually am one that does the detours, but,
Can you zoom in? Can you?
yeah, right? So the purpose of the question is to see, does it have legs in town?
Right.
So regardless, we can discuss what the result of that question is
just need to hear it.
later.
We just need to know that we need to ask the question, and there has to be some level of background information
Yes.
associated with it. Yes.
Do you not consider what's in the lead-in paragraph to be sufficient information for that? I mean, it does talk about tuition, it does talk about transportation, it does.
I went right by that one because Ray dragged us to number 10.
I'm
before we
sorry.
even worked through.
And I'm gonna drag you right back to number 10 for a minute. We
You
actually,
already put it in- okay, so it's all right there. Sorry.
we answered this question. When they voted
So
for the
kind,
high
go
school
ahead.
in this town, we answered this question. When they voted to put that high school over
How
there.
many, how many kids were in the high school
I
at that
don't
point in
disagree
time?
with you, Ray, whatsoever. It's not an option I would personally consider. I think it's an option the high school would.
We had 140 kids in a class now. We have class sizes of what, 85?
I agree.
Things have changed.
Right, so,
unfortunately, there's also an argument that some of the birth rate stuff has gone back up, so we could see an increase at some point. And that was based off of current build out in the town as well. Like,
That's
so-
not birth rate, then it's more build out.
No.
It's
But
development.
the point being that I know that there was concern about like, well, we have constrained space in town, so we don't expect that much more population. But as a birth rate matter, we could be constrained on space if birth rates increase, which I believe is what they've seen happening for the younger grades. So
Sure.
overall, this either furthers the discussion or it kills the discussion.
100%. I think we have to ask the question.
I think we have to ask the question.
And I think we need to move on
And
from.
I would agree.
I'm
I
sorry,
don't think
Red.
there's
It's
a lot
okay,
of-
I'll take that as.
I'm with you, but
Decide, but yeah.
we do have to ask.
Clarify question.
Yes.
We've talked a little bit about professional help or doing it on our own, and going back to Ray's point previously of ensuring that it is one vote per person, a voting member of the town of Litchfield. How do you foresee going about that? Is it collecting data
So-
through a Google form?
All right,
Is
so
it-
let's go back a second, even though it's the last thing on here. So one thing that I added to this agenda that we do have to talk about, which was a huge flop on the last efforts that we made, was PR, right? Like, it was just it's really hard to get information out across the board. And so
PHLN.
I do think we do probably at some point need to explore having professional help for that. There is, I did, again, I asked Kyle because I don't know who else to ask for these things, but if anyone has any other examples or ideas about this, it's great. But there is a company called Guilfoyle that does PR, and they do have experience working within school districts, and they do also do community engagement stuff, survey stuff. So that's one option. I love the idea of the UNH thing too. So that's another option. We could always go that route to begin with and see how that looks. And then if we think, we don't have to jump on the PR bandwagon as early as the survey bandwagon. So
I don't think we would engage anybody to do PR or advertising until we had a clear direction from the school board on which option or options we were going to present
Right.
officially to the community above and beyond the survey.
right, yeah.
So
I mean,
I think if we get the survey, I like the UNH extension thing. I think that's a really good idea. And we can take this document and probably give it to them, and they can probably fix it or make it so it's more neutral. I don't want to use the word fix, probably a bad choice of word, sorry. But tighten it up, yeah, wordsmith it.
Third party.
So just to clarify, I was not suggesting that we start a PR campaign. I was just suggesting, absent that suggestion that I didn't have when I was putting this on the agenda, we need someone to do that, right? And they do survey work. So the idea was, if we engage them for survey work, then we have someone that we have a relationship with that if we had to go the PR route, we could. I'm all for the UNH thing. I think that's great. I mean, that sounds
So
awesome.
can we ask Jen to engage with the
Yeah.
UNH
Let's do
extension
that.
program to?
I did not participate as heavily as you all did. You guys did a great job on this. Just want to openly acknowledge that.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think so.
Can I just-
Can I, one more, and we were talking about maybe putting all the information up front, but
Yes.
my fear is that if you have 100 words or more, you're gonna lose people before they even get to the questions. I actually like this format.
Yeah.
And maybe we just work on what those intro paragraphs are, and as you suggested, put like actual headers of what the topic is for the questions that follow. But I just think people will read a paragraph and answer the questions, sort of like the old, school.
The
essay.
prompt. Yeah, the prompt, yeah.
Question, like taking a test, right?
Awesome. I do want to keep going because I want to make sure we go through everything.
I just wanted to pass down just to Brian, in case you run into a brick wall at Onsite Insight. Those are 3 other New England-based.
Are we done with this part?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 7:05. We have 25 minutes, and
Talk fast.
within the framework of the time that you've asked for. So,
Okay.
Ron had reached out and had been doing some more independent work and had some stuff that he wanted to discuss with the committee. So I said we would be happy to put it on the agenda.
Okay, I actually sent this out ahead of time, so I'm just gonna read what I put together and go from there. So it is from myself to the FIC committee dated 7/17, and subject GMS observations and recommendations. Number 1, building evaluation of GMS and renovation option. I requested at the 4/24 FIC meeting an evaluation of existing conditions to determine the level of deferred maintenance and identify unknown structural conditions. At that meeting, Carl Barker and his team said they could do the work for $5,000. The subsequent assessment by Carl Barker and two BPS employees, construction manager, occurred on 5/28/2024. Rich LaSalle and I were in attendance. Information based on the 5/28/24 assessment and presented at the 6/17/2024 meeting. The 5/28/2024 assessment did not respond to the request and evaluation. The effort did not involve any exploratory activity. Instead, it was just another walkthrough. At the walkthrough, Barker and BBS representatives noted that all the roof membranes are in good condition and should be fine for a while based on their previous inspection of the roof. Also during the walkthrough, it was agreed by all that water was not coming through the floor and that moisture is entering the building through open windows, doors, and unsealed areas of the building exterior during the day and condensing on the floor and lower walls of the interior as the interior cools in the evening and night. It was agreed that fixing ventilation deficiencies as recommended in several studies would be the answer for the water condensation issue. The conceptual renovation option presented at the 5/28/2024 assessment by Barker Associates and presented at the 6/17/2024 FIC meeting proposes to completely remove and replace all systems within the building, resulting in a complete floor-to-ceiling rebuild of the majority of the building. The conceptual renovation option cost was discussed at the 6/17 FIC meeting with contingency added was given to be at least $19.6 million. This figure did not include any additional room space or roof replacement. This will add a cost of approximately $1 million for roof replacement and multiple millions for additional room and related facility space. Disruption to school facilities would likely be untenable. In the Barker conceptual renovation option estimate, seismic retrofit was estimated at $250,000. This number seems to be order of magnitude low. It is even unknown if the building can be modified to be seismic compliant. Structural steel bracing that is anticipated to be added within rooms would greatly impact existing room size, appearance, and function. It is possible that seismic retrofitting could be impossible to design due to the construction of the existing building. Thus, seismic retrofit could be a fatal flaw for renovations to the existing building. Verification of this issue will require detailed design that analyzes the entire building. The cost of design work to evaluate the seismic retrofit will likely exceed $1 million. The need to expand the level of money identified above for design work to properly evaluate the renovation option as part of the decision-making process is affirmed by the NHDOT Manual for Planning and Construction of School Buildings 2006, which contains the following guidance and ominous warning. Funding the planning process, and this paragraph is directly out of that manual. Funding the planning process in a world of shrinking resources and growing demands for public accountability, getting the necessary funding for a facilities planning process can be extremely difficult. While much can be done by volunteers, at some point there will be a need to pay for the necessary professional services to analyze existing buildings, to prepare preliminary programming and design studies, to conduct environmental and geotechnical investigations of possible building sites, and to develop accurate cost estimates for the alternatives on consideration. Many districts are understandably reluctant to commit funds prior to a bond vote, but presenting a proposal to the voters without adequate study and accurate cost estimates can be a formula for disaster. Conceptual drawings and a rough cost estimate are not sufficient. It is unwise and very risky to promise the public that a building can be constructed on a particular site for a given cost without having conducted geotechnical site investigations and using only gross estimating techniques for the construction cost. When projects are proposed without adequate planning, the result can be significant cost overruns or major reductions in the scope of the project to fit within the budget. Worst, without adequately researching and analyzing all feasible alternatives, the district cannot be sure that the proposed project is the best solution. Possible sources of funding include direct appropriation specifically for planning and design work, funds from a capital reserve account, and funds from impact fees. Many districts appropriate planning and design funds in one year with the expectation of a project that will be proposed the following year. Sufficient funding should be provided to thoroughly analyze alternatives, to conduct geotechnical investigations and environmental studies of proposed building sites, and to complete at least 50% of the design work for any proposed construction. I conclude that renovation of GMS is not a viable option due to the cost being compatible with a new school, unknown if it would qualify for state aid, seismic retrofit potentially a fatal flaw, cost to adequately evaluate a renovation option is over $1 million. See the NHDOT recommendation that design must be progressed to at least 50% to thoroughly analyze an alternative. The estimated total design cost for renovation option is expected to be well in excess of $2 million. Cost to undertake evaluation of renovation option will need voter approval, and no identifiable advantage over new school option. Number 2, maintenance and mitigation of key concerns option. A reality check of current situation. How much money needs to be spent on GMS to reopen the new school, for the new school year? 0. How many years can we continue without spending money on required and deferred maintenance at GMS? Unknown. Is continuing to spend near $0 on required and deferred maintenance and a prudent approach? Not likely. What is a prudent approach? Answer: perform priority maintenance and undertake mitigation of key concerns. Based on discussion of the 6/26/2024 school board meeting, school board is of the opinion that enough study has been done. School board is not willing to spend more money on evaluation or assessment. School board restricted FIC consideration to GMS only. Thus, based on the above school board decisions, we must look to previous studies to develop a roadmap for future options. 3, 4 major issues at GMS from previous studies. A, wet floors. B, proximity to the 3A and concern for child exiting building and wandering onto roadway. C, traffic congestion on 3A during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. D, space needs at GMS. Number 4, mitigation solutions. Wet floors. Improved ventilation is needed to solve the wet floor issue as recommended in several reports. Humidity issue is principally in the 50s and 60s sections of the building. All now agree that water is not coming through the floor. Humidity issues occur in late spring, summer, and early fall when water table is lowest and outside heat and humidity are highest. There are 2 existing rooftop units, RTUs, currently in place that are for ventilation of the 50s and 60s section, principally during non-heating periods. Several reports indicated that 2 RTUs are obsolete and need to be replaced. The existing ventilation ducts can be reused. Required replacement RTU unit size estimated to be 20 to 25 tons capacity. The RTUs could contain dehumidification and potentially air conditioning functions. From internet research, estimated cost is $50 to $60 per RTU unit and includes installation. Adding contingency of 50% provides a conceptual cost estimate of $75,000 for each RTU. Thus, conceptual cost for replacement of both RTUs is $150,000. B, proximity to 3A and concern for child exiting building and wandering onto the roadway. Place monitor in cafeteria during student occupancy, could be volunteer or non-professional hire. Install alarm system on all doors that sound an alarm upon unauthorized exit. The triggered alarm could be announced in the office. Commercial alarms are approximately $1,000. Assume additional $2,000 per door for installation and alarm announcement in the office. Doors requiring alarms is approximately 12. Cost estimate for alarms is $36,000. Install additional video cameras for complete coverage of the entire building with monitor in office. There is currently a video camera system in place. It is recommended that additional outside cameras be added for the complete building coverage focused on the exits. Additional cameras are estimated to be $1,000, with installation being $1,500 per camera. It is estimated that 8 additional cameras would be needed for a total of $20,000. Fence around the building configured to lead student movement toward office area. Perimeter of school with fence offset is approximately 500 feet. 5-foot fence estimated to be $25 per foot with a cost of $12,500. Add 50% for gates with limited access control for a cost of $6,250. Total estimated cost is $1,875. Total cost for mitigation of proximity to 3A is $74,750. Traffic congestion on 3A during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. Implement no left turn for non-buses from 3A during opening and closing time periods. Eliminates biggest congestion and safety issue due to the queuing of southbound vehicles in travel lane of the highway and crossing onto oncoming traffic in attempt to get spot in the queue drop-off line. Shoulder storage on 3A back to Pinecrest Road has 1,900 feet, much greater than the driveway distance contained in the former proposed new school plan. Cost for sign and entrance to school, $2,000. Space needs at GMS. CHS is approximately 60% classroom utilization per former superintendent presentation at school board meeting of 6/26/2024. See attached spreadsheet from presentation. CHS was designed to accommodate 600 students. Current enrollment is approximately 380. Moving additional grades from GMS to LMS and grades from LMS to CHS can be implemented based on available space at CHS. Based on the total student capacity within the school district and current projections for future school enrollment projections, there is no need for additional classroom space within the school district. If 2 classes are moved up, then GMS would accommodate the remaining students without need of other portables. Thus, no additional space needs to be added at GMS based on current enrollment numbers and projections. At GMS, it is prudent to address required and deferred maintenance and mitigation solutions of key concerns of the existing building. Conclusions, number 5. No need for major renovation of GMS to add space or respond to existing conditions. Must prioritize maintenance at GMS. Begin with ventilation improvements in the 50s and 60s section. Can mitigate key concerns at GMS easily and for low relative cost. No need for a new school. Recommendation for action. Recommend to the school board to seek HVAC contractor services to replace the 2 RTU units in the 50-60 section. Recommend to the school board to implement recommendations for mitigation solution of proximity to 3A as presented above. Recommend to the school board to implement 3A traffic mitigation solution plan as presented above. Recommend to the school board that they undertake relocation of the class space within existing GMS, LMS, and CHS facilities. In the end, and with that, I would like to make a motion to recommend to the school board for action the 4 items that I identified in item 6 of my memo.
Well, we have a motion for that.
It's a lot of information to.
I will entertain a second for the purposes of discussion.
I will second for the purposes of discussion.
All right.
I can just tell you that a budget committee vote, that we don't vote on things that we receive that day. So we receive it one meeting, we discuss, and then consider a vote. So I think it's awesome that you put together such a very detailed report, but there's so much in it. I don't know that anybody should.
And I am not asking, I wanted to make a recommendation, so we would have to discuss it.
I gotcha.
Well, we would have given you the
and
courtesy
I
of discussing it regardless.
And I understand.
First, one question that came up, that it was stated very definitively, and I want to make sure that that people agree, is that the moisture is not coming from the ground, but is instead coming from the air. Is that agreed upon? Because that's been discussion in the past when the outcomes of the H.L. Turner report, they told us if we updated the mechanical systems, our moisture problems would be resolved.
Correct.
We were told that that was not accurate by
Kyle.
other people, but now it seems that H.L. Turner actually is being supported in this. So do we all agree or not? Because that changes the dynamic.
I
Well,
have no
let me
idea.
just, I'll respond to your answer. When we walked through on that day, and you were there, Richard, I don't know if you remember, both Kyle and BPS said, yeah, it's not coming through the floor. It
Because
is,
we've been hearing a lot about high water tables, that's leading to our moisture.
Yes.
If that's not the source of moisture, then we've been chasing the wrong solution.
we have been chasing that for 7 years,
Or more money.
So
incorrectly.
originally, I was of that argument that it's like bringing a Coke can out of your fridge on a hot August day, right? Set it down and it's covered with moisture. And Kyle used the exact same analogy, that the can isn't leaking, it's the humidity in the air, it's condensing on the can. But he also came back the last time Kyle came back and said he was wrong and that there is some signs that moisture is coming up through the foundation and bringing up, lifting some of the tile.
No,
What
I
he
think
said-
the condensation is creating the tile to lift, but there is cold water under the slab, and it creates the same effect.
Same effect.
What he
It's condensation,
saw,
it's not leakage.
what he mentioned was that there was evidence of leaching in concrete at the floor and wall interface. He said, I'm not so sure, that's what he cited as potentially coming up through the floor. I would argue that that's where all the condensation occurs, and that's where you would naturally expect, where the water is, you will see leaching out of the concrete that is being contacted with the water continually.
And see, I wouldn't think an outside wall, because the outside walls are gonna be the warmest part of the building in the summertime, because they're,
Underground
the
is
heat's coming in, but the centers would be cold.
The point being is, we walked through, when I walked the same day that you were there, I don't know if you walked through the building.
Yep.
There's no air moving. The RT units aren't functioning. Nothing's moving. All the shades are up and all the windows are covered to try to keep, sun infiltration to keep the heat down.
So,
There's no movement.
so-
Let me just finish. With the exception of it's nice and cool where the RT unit's working in the office.
So there's a lot of other, I think
That's
there's a
air
lot of other
conditioning.
issues with this analysis for me.
Correct.
That would warrant not saying, okay, let's just go fix all the RTU units, because I don't know if it's the prudent thing to expend the money on based off of some of these other things. You know, I appreciate that you've given some solutions to some of the things. I don't view some of these things as solutions. So, for example, putting a monitor in the cafeteria. We can't hire monitors, so
Well, do
we're
you
not gonna.
not already have people in the cafeteria during lunch periods or whenever the students are in there?
We do. But
So do we need another person? Hey, Johnny's running out the door, let's go get him.
Right.
I mean, realistically, you already have eyes on the space.
And I also, and I voiced this to you when we said it, when it comes to the proximity to 3A, while students eloping from the building is a concern, my biggest concern is a truck driver has a sneezing fit.
Can I say, Dan, that is the first time that issue has ever been raised about 3A.
with the fact that cars could potentially hit.
Yes, that has never been talked about in any discussions about the
Have
concern
we
of
seen a
3A.
situation, so the building's been there for a long time. Have we had close calls? Or is this I've had a client who said, what are all my bad issues? And the guy said to my project manager at the time, the only thing he missed was a meteor striking the building. So like, is it a realistic, or is it just this could happen?
That's an example of the proximity to 3A is not as simple as kids could run out onto the road, and if we just fix that one thing, then we fix the whole problem. The proximity to 3A presents a complex multitude of situations that we may have to live with, we may have to address, but just putting a fence up,
Which is
does
why
not
the
address
state has tied
all
that
of the
to funding
concerns
if
of
we
the
were to try to
proximity
get funding
3A.
for something.
And we need electricity down there. That building is tapped out far as electricity. If you're gonna replace those units and add air conditioning,
How do you know? How do you know that?
Jolt Election has told us.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Ooh,
Independent contractors.
Jolt
that
Electric, we moved a copy machine to a new room.
I
and they
spent a
told us
lot of time in that building.
We have max capacity, so
just
we-
wait.
Does that mean we cannot draw another line though?
No.
we would have to,
Right,
Right
that can be
now,
done.
we have drawn
So-
the capacity of the building
It's
at
not
its
just
current
small.
layout.
Right, so we could do it, but then it becomes not just mechanical, now it's mechanical electrical.
But at this point, those units have electrical feeds to both of them.
But there's gonna probably be more
But they're not
power consumption.
No one knows until you start to look at it.
Right, but
That's the
Oh,
point.
But again, now we're talking about, we're talking about pursuing an option that we haven't sourced out whether or not that's the option that we should be pursuing, and that's the.
With the exception, and that is what's in all the reports that we need to do, is replace the HVAC
So
units.
to me, it changes, it does twist, it adjusts the focus of the conversations, right? Because for the longest time, it's been groundwater, 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 groundwater. We can't fix that. But if it's not the groundwater, but instead the air, I think that means we need to consider
So-
different conversations.
Right, so to address HVAC, right, is it needs to be analyzed. And I'm not talking about an architect or a building contractor to go through. You gotta hire a commercial HVAC tech. Because the problem with just replacing the units, it's not gonna fix your airflow problem. You're still gonna have the same restrictions with the ductwork in the placement and where it's going.
Yeah,
So
but
you
no.
have,
Well, we don't
Don't
know
we have
that.
control
We don't know
over
that. Because the existing units don't work.
So part of the problem, based on the H.L. Turner, is.
They don't work.
Somebody thought to save a few bucks, we'd kill off the controls contractor. In doing so, we lost control. So part of the discussion back then was, well, we need new controls. Well, that's mechanical, that's electrical, that's other things.
Yep.
So really, we should probably analyze the existing, if the system were to be properly balanced and functioning as designed, would it be back to a better state?
I don't know that's the case, Carrie, because
If it's
going back
not-
in my history books, when they put all that ductwork up in there, it was meant to ventilate, it wasn't meant to dehumidify or to air condition. And the problem you have is basically that. It's just,
But the problem is,
There's-
it's not working.
there's dehumidifiers running in all those rooms.
Yes.
It's costing us the same, but
when they did
we're not
the
getting the
ESSER
effect.
work, when they did the ESSER work and they did all this mechanical HVAC stuff, they found fans that were out of the ceiling and in a maintenance closet because it wasn't working, it hadn't been fixed, and it hadn't been reinstalled.
Yeah, I agree with you
So
there.
our system's not working correctly to begin with.
Jen.
go ahead.
So if I can just speak to renovating, because I am living in a building that was recently renovated to have not HVAC, but dehumidification or whatever you want to call it. But I can tell you for a fact, when those units were placed on the roof and they repaired it, we had massive leaking because the ductwork that was originally there could not handle the condensate, and therefore we had to replace all the brand new ceiling tiles that had just been replaced because it pooled and puddled and caused a problem with
That's the
condensation.
We have
The
to,
condensation
we're talking
and
about,
insulation.
we're talking about like logistical aspects of something.
go
when
back
we-
and
I think we need to
retrofit to
address
insulate
the bigger question here, which is, first and foremost, do we agree that this is a proposal to go back to the pay-as-you-go approach of repairing things?
I think it's an option that should be presented to the community to say, this is an option. For pros, cons, this is an option.
To do that,
Go
though,
down
you
the
kind
path.
of want to have like a 5-year plan.
Adding that to the
Which-
survey as an
which-
option?
Yes.
Well, I mean, but wouldn't that kind of go into,
It's in one of the
For
questions.
maintenance.
wouldn't that be basically question number 4?
The survey was specifically not addressing any money issues and directly not addressing how we pay.
Well, the other component of this that I struggle with is, I know you and I talked about this, but like, I don't feel as though this is addressing any of the educational or programming concerns. I know you have the opinion
Agreed.
that we would be, along with this plan, there would be a shifting of students from, like, you had mentioned moving 8th grade to the high school, moving 4th grade to the middle school. I don't even know from like an educational standpoint, like, if that's even something that can be done. Like, I don't even know if that can be done. But nonetheless, that's something that we have to figure out if the community even would support. Right?
I just want to speak briefly to the chart. While I'm more than happy to have a discussion about room usage at the high school, I don't think we should rely on this chart. Unfortunately, the former superintendent and I did not have a chance to touch base about this chart. He just pulled data off of Power School. Just because a classroom does not have a class in it does not mean it's not in use.
Why is that? Why?
Because the teacher has a planning period, that's their home base, that's their office, that's where they do their
Oh,
work. We
no.
have collaborative meetings.
Small
We've-
groups work
yes.
in there with
The
students.
school was developed for 600 kids. A lot of classrooms have thus been retrofitted for offices and other spaces. Again, I'm more than happy to have the conversation about what usage of space could look like at the high school, but there are only 2 classrooms at the high school that are not utilized during the school day. Yes, there are times when classes don't have students in them. That does not mean that they're an empty space. Very happy to have the conversation, but this chart is very misleading for the conversation that we could have about how we could use space.
Well, can I just say, the opposite, that the monkey in the room is that the school was designed for 500 students, we have 380.
It doesn't mean we have less classrooms now than it was originally built
So
for.
which area,
Yes, we
are you
have
talking about the
smaller
SAU,
How
where
much
the
is-
SAU
The
is?
SAU, we've changed some classrooms into, we have our teacher space, some different offices now that we use for a special ed conference room. Things have changed in the past 24 years as some enrollment has gone down. So yes, there's less students, but there's only 2 classroom spaces that are not used during the day. One is a science lab in our science wing, and one is a science lab in our English humanities
So-
wing, because we don't offer a 9th grade.
I'll be honest with you, I can't fathom that, be honest with you.
I think you're gonna have a hard, I understand that,
And again,
I
open
think
to a
you're-
conversation.
I think you're gonna have a
Just
hard time.
this chart is misleading.
Sure, ignoring the chart
Yep.
though, looking purely at numbers, you're gonna have a hard time convincing the community that there's no, members of the community, perhaps not the community as a whole, but members of the community, that there is not enough space to accommodate the classes when it's essentially half occupied. So it's,
So space aside, though, like I think what Jake's offering is like if this becomes something that we need to investigate,
It will require
than
change.
he's more than open to addressing it, right? So like
Absolutely.
that's really all that matters of this point. I think we just have to. There are multiple layers of this plan that have wider implications that we need to know whether the community would even support.
And I honestly think the 10 questions in the survey will lead us into an answer as to whether that presentation that Ron just gave, which is as very detailed, is a viable thing to move forward with.
Right.
Because it addresses moving students between school buildings, it addresses performing work at the existing GMS without adding an addition, and it also addresses proximity concerns and educational value. But I am gonna caution replacing the RTUs and stating that it's 150K without understanding why that dehumidification system isn't working is gonna lead you down a path of spending 10x.
Wasting money,
Spending
it's
what?
just a waste of money.
To spending 10 times the cost. Because you're gonna go replace the units for 150 grand and realize that you still have the same problem. Or you have the condensation issue, which is a very real thing, because essentially to dehumidify, you're air conditioning it. You're conditioning the air and you're drawing that out. So if you do that, the metal duct work is then gonna leach that drier air and cooler air, which then creates the condensation on the ductwork.
well, and the
Those
open
units down
air-
there are not dehumidifiers or air conditioners.
Well, that, and the open air requirements have changed significantly since COVID, right?
Yeah.
They want more fresh air, which is gonna be more humidity if the outside is more humid. Are the current systems designed to handle that level of humidity and
And-
dehumidification?
The
So there's
ducts
a
are
lot of
undersized.
things.
Right. So and I agree. The point is to generate the conversation. Is this something to go pursue? I think it's something worth but I also think that a lot of these questions in the survey can address that if we want to look beyond, I'll say, the statistical answers that are provided and look beyond what the question is asking.
Well, let me go back to, I actually had 4 pieces in there, the CHS we just talked about. I would actually, as I read, I believe that a renovation option at DMS is not feasible to consider.
Well,
Just let me, does anybody else, oh, sorry, I apologize. You
No,
started
that's
to
fine.
respond.
But
I
you're basing
apologize.
that off of the fact that you now are of the opinion that it's probably somewhere in the $20+ million range to renovate.
So define renovation, because a renovation could be any size, large, or anything that we want it to be. You can renovate just the HVAC.
So,
Can I approach that?
Yeah, exactly. Not easily, but it can be done.
But so
Let
if
me-
we could, yeah, go ahead.
Let me just respond to that. All the times we had Carl Barker here that I've been involved, I've asked him for the approach you just suggest, which I'll call responding to maintenance. Every time, and including the last time that he was here, he came through with the renovation. He has no incentive, none, to come up with a maintenance approach because he doesn't get paid for it.
I don't,
So
Just think about it.
no, we've talked, listen, we can't keep going backwards on this. We've talked about the pay-as-you-go approach. We had a full discussion about the fact that the pay-as-you-go approach is problematic because once you start trying to do one thing, there are other things that need to get done that it doesn't make sense to.
You'd have to
So,
have
so,
something
for
to-
example, your presupposition that we can simply just replace the HVAC units, keep all of the ducting as is,
Right.
ignores the fact that if Jen's point is correct, that the ducting becomes a problem, now you do have to do the ducting, which means taking down the ceilings, which means, does it make sense to replace the ceilings at that time or not? That was Kyle's point. It's not fair to
goes back-
And
categorize
also,
it
that
as he's
section of the
not.
building has a terrible envelope.
So
Right.
that also goes back to what Brian was mentioning, was that when you assess I'll say a capital improvement project, right, in the commercial scale, you talk about what are all the other things? Does it make sense to put new RTUs on the roof when the last assessment of the roof was that, oh, actually it's older than what we all thought it was. So whether it's fine and it's sealed is a different question about its usable lifetime.
Right.
So, because if we have to go install new RTUs, and then you have to remove those RTUs via crane to replace the roof and reseal it and restructure the roof, then
So I need to.
I've never seen that being a
In
requirement.
the interest of, time, we're 5 minutes over, so I need to kind of I will let you make one more statement
Yep.
and then that, go ahead.
My last statement just goes on to what Dan was just saying in regards to, at LMS, we had a teacher's room that was vibrating, had major structural concerns, was causing humongous issues over the course of a full year, causing her to need to move classrooms. She's a well-known and respected individual in the town, is a resident of Litchfield, so I'm sure people that know who I'm talking about know that it was a big problem. When we went to look at what the reason was, it's because there were 3 units above her classroom that was causing
But the sound would
to
drive
litter,
you.
like your
That
jaw would
to me
rotate.
is maddening because when we went to schools, they were always in the hallways for that very reason.
But
Is that with the
Specifically
new
put them in the
installation?
hallways.
yeah, the new is,
All right, so,
but it's retrofitting on the building, so they ended up having to go in and
So-
cause crosshairs and
Okay,
build
so where we're at
backfit
now,
things.
I do have to move this along. Mr. Blaine did make a motion. We did have a second on that, so we have to do our due diligence on that. All in favor?
Can we read the
I
motion?
Can I have one more comment? I think we should hold any vote on what we're gonna put forward to the school board until we
He
do
made a
the survey.
motion and there's a
Table it.
second, so
Can
I
we
have,
table it
I'll
to the
amend my
next-
motion to table it.
just remove, you withdraw your motion, okay.
I
All right, thank
withdraw it
you.
to
That
vote.
makes my life easier.
So
Okay.
next steps.
Next steps, that's exactly where we were going with this. Okay, so we have, just to recap this meeting, we have.
Survey.
We have a motion.
But the first thing was the work that you guys were gonna be
Actually,
doing.
the first thing is that Dan, do it.
He's gonna be working on the school dude stuff.
Do it. No, he's going to be the citizen co-chair.
That's right.
Oh, that's the first, well, we know that, but we don't have to, that's not action.
You
moving
asked for a
forward.
recap of the meeting. I asked for a
Yeah.
recap of the meeting.
No, okay, so,
I know it's
school dude, you're working on the school dude piece of things.
Yep.
You're gonna be reaching out to find out about the, yes, on-site insight.
Information subcommittee will gather to skeleton out the Google Drive.
Okay. And then Jen is gonna be reaching out to UNH regarding the survey information, and then there was a little bit of feedback for the communication committee. Did you find that information to be actionable, like that we have some directive on stuff that we need to do for that, or what was the?
If I can let UNH look at it,
UNH Collaborative.
if they'll take a look.
Okay, I didn't know if there was, I didn't know if we had any,
I could change the few words that want to change, but I think we need to just take.
okay. So that's where we stand with that.
questions are good.
Kyle, last thing, Kyle did reach out to me and let me know that he and Bonnet Page and Stone did complete the update of all the numbers. If the committee feels as though it would be a benefit, he had offered to come back next time to give us that updated information.
Can he just email the group and we can have a chance to look at it before the meeting? Because
I can
it's
certainly
super frustrating to
Yeah, I
get
could
the
certainly ask him
information
to do
here.
that. But does it make sense to say yes?
I
by all
think
means?
it does. I don't think we should shut off any of the options at this point, to be
Okay.
honest with you. Kyle, to be honest, he makes great sense when he comes in, so,
So,
why wouldn't we not do that?
can I do another quick recap? This kind of came up in a couple side conversations at previous meetings. Optics view, there's a lot of ex officio members sitting at the microphones in the table. If this is supposed to be a committee by the community, should we have, I'll say, preference to voting members at the table?
I'd be more than happy to sit in the
You wanna
back
take me
and
off
follow.
camera?
Absolutely.
The only thing is they are doing a lot of, well.
Yep. So there's a lot of administrative stuff also going on. So like Brian should be at the table, Matt should be at the table, Rich and I would even say selectman representative should be at the table.
I'm okay back there.
Karen, you can
And
Spends a
going
lot
from
of time
there.
at the table.
So it was just from an optics point of view, outside looking in. If we're going to try to provide the optics that this is a citizens push forward and citizens review of it, it's
Thank
just an observation.
Okay.
Can I just second that? It is awkward. I mean, all of us back here are members of the committee, but we feel like the audience.
So
Or I feel like the audience, right? I mean, I don't know.
yeah.
It's just awkward.
we've tried to
And it's
figure
hard to be
out.
heard if you're 2 rows back and you have very strong voices from certain people who.
I have tried to look at an
Table?
alternate meeting space. We don't unfortunately have one, which would have been very nice.
Is it just the streaming and filming?
Yeah. I will talk with Dan offline about some ideas on how we could address that. I very much appreciate that. The only last thing that I need to leave you with is, we need to make sure that any stuff that we're working on here flows through this committee up to the school board. So the school board just doesn't want us emailing them each.
Yeah.
So,
It's got to be a direct, defined set of communication.
right. So, all right. With that said, I think we will end here. Sorry, we're 10 minutes
Date of
over,
next
but I
meeting?
appreciate it. The next meeting is on the second Wednesday, the 14th of August will be our next meeting.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
What is that date?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I know, right? I was like, I don't feel like.
Now that we can vote,
Go ahead.
I can't.
Oh, sorry.
Motion to conclude.
Anyone second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
I just got a text. President Biden has COVID.
That's unfortunate, and I hope he's okay.
I agree.